Hi, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and welcome back to A Simple Word. Wally was an awkward and shy little boy. He belonged to the church's kid club. And as Christmas drew near, the kids club handed out roles for the Christmas play. But what role should the teacher give to Wally? It had to be an important enough role so that he felt good, but also not so important that he could ruin the whole play. So the teacher decided that Wally would play the innkeeper in Bethlehem. It was an important role, and Wally only needed to speak one line. "I'm sorry, we have no room." Wally grinned from ear to ear when he learned of his important role. He practiced his single line over and over as Christmas drew near. And soon enough, the night of the Christmas play arrived. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. Mary and Joseph had traveled to Bethlehem and come to the door of the inn. Joseph knocked on the door, and it opened, and there stood Wally, still grinning from ear to ear. "Please, sir, do you have a room we could take?" asked Joseph. Wally shook his head and replied with perfect diction, "I'm sorry, we have no room." Now, the boy playing Joseph was a particularly good actor for a child, and he decided to elaborate on the script. So rather than he and Mary turning away at this point, the boy said, "But sir, my wife is about to have her baby, and we need somewhere to stay. Couldn't you just find a little room?" Wally's face went white. This was not part of the plan. He didn't know what to say. So he blurted out his rehearsed line anxiously, "I'm sorry, we have no room." "But sir," replied the boy actor playing Joseph, "we've traveled such a long way, and we've nowhere else to go, and my wife is very tired. Surely you can find us something." Wally stood there still as stone and bowed his head. And finally he replied, "I'm sorry, we have no room." So Joseph and Mary turned away dejectedly. But now Wally, shamed and saddened, jumped fully into his role. He looked as if he might break out into tears as he ran out after Joseph and Mary, knocking over the set pieces and shouting, "Wait, come back. You can have my room." It was not very scriptural. And it was not at all according to the script. But little Wally gave perfect expression in that moment to what Christmas should mean. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That true light which enlightened everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him. But the world didn't know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people didn't accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave power to become children of God. In writing these words, the Apostle John is pointing back to the beginning, the very beginning. In fact, he starts his gospel with the same words that opened the book of Genesis, "In the beginning." John's telling us that something new is happening. We're at the dawn of a new creation. The first creation, Adam and Eve, and all that followed, it was poisoned and corrupted by sin. And so a terrible spiritual darkness lay over God's broken creation. And in this darkness, the enemy dominated wounded humanity. And this darkness was terrible and led men to do horrible, unimaginable things to one another. And this darkness was so dense that it seemed impenetrable. But John reminds us, God's light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. The light of God, who we call the Son, the living Word, the perfect image of the Father, entered into the darkness of God's broken creation, entered into the darkness of human history, and walked among us as a living man. But his own people, those who had been waiting for him for centuries and centuries, rejected him. But to those who did accept him, he gave this incredible power to become a new creation, to become the children of God. We hear that a lot, the children of God. What does that mean? Have we become children of God? And if we have, how do we know? Why did God send Jesus Christ into the world? Certainly to save the world from sin. But that was only the beginning, the first step in the cure of our disease. What was the ultimate purpose for God becoming man? In his document, Redemptor Hominis, St. John Paul II wrote, Christ, the new Adam, in the very revelation of the mystery of the Father and of his love, fully reveals man to himself and brings to light his most high calling. So Jesus didn't merely come to ransom us from sin. He came to show us who we are, to reveal what it means to be in the image of God, to live as children of God, to reveal our ultimate vocation. But if we're to understand the beginning, we also have to understand the end. If we're going to grasp at the mystery of the incarnation, we have to grasp at the intentionality of God. And what is that? What does God desire us to be as individuals, as families, as a church? He himself tells us in his prayer to the Father on the eve of his death, he prayed that they may all be one, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, that they also may be one in us. The end reveals the beginning. All that happened, the Annunciation, the Incarnation, the virgin birth, the walking on water, the healings and the miracles, the passion and the cross and the resurrection. It all happened for one ultimate purpose, that we may all be one, as the Son and the Father are one. But are we one? Do we live in the loving unity of the first Christians? When people listen to us and look at our lives and how we treat one another, the words we use, do they say about us as they did the early Christians? Look how they love one another. I think this is one of the greatest evils and gravest sins of so-called faithful Christians. We tear each other down. We condemn each other in our minds. We judge one another in our hearts. But do we pray for one another? We accuse one another. But do we suffer and sacrifice for one another? A young woman once came to Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and she began complaining about her parish priest. He does this and he does that. And Mother Teresa held up her hand. And she told her, you have so much time to cut him down. But how much time have you spent on your knees praying for him? And the woman didn't have an answer. The light shines in the darkness. The true light has come into the world, has given us power that we might become children of God, that we might be one, as the Father and the Son are one. And I think as Christians, as a community, we should reflect deeply on the true meaning of Christmas, because unity and peace begin here, in our hearts. And we will never have peace and unity in our world and in our communities and in our church and in our families until we first have unity in our own hearts. And if we don't have unity in the bond of peace, we'll never convert the family or the world. We'll proclaim a gospel in our liturgies and preach an anti-gospel with our actions. We'll proclaim Jesus Christ in our worship, but we'll show the world an antichrist with our attitudes and our behaviors. And so on this solemn day of Christmas, let us, as St. Paul says, strive to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Let's remember why Jesus came, and let's seek to build that civilization of love. And if we do, they'll say of us, as they did the first Christians, look how they love one another. And if we don't, then all of the trees and all the presents and the songs and the food, they were meaningless. I'm Father Joseph Mary. Thanks for listening to A Simple Word. Please, you and your families have a very Merry Christmas.